Hello, everyone. I'm Brent Bushy here with the School Zone podcast and have Brad Clark, the General Counsel for the State Department of Education. Thanks for joining us, Brad.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Good morning.
So we're recording this one on a Friday, April 3rd. I asked my team an important question before we get started today, Brad, which was if I've worn jeans all week, is it okay to wear sweatpants? Because that seems like on Friday to dress down, that seems like a slippery slope to me,
I would agree. Definitely a slippery slope there.
Yeah, I don't need to be, look like a hobo. I think we got at least a few more weeks of this quarantine. So I always like to start off with something serious here with the podcast. But thanks for joining us, Brad. So today we're going to try and explore all of the thorny legal issues that have, not all, but like at least the hot topics that have come up as we've moved into distance learning and all of this whole new world post-COVID-19. It's only been 3 weeks.
I know. It seems like 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking, a month ago, I was just reading an article about the Super Tuesday, and
Wow.
that's less than a month ago.
Right.
Oh gosh, it's just crazy. So anyway, so we'll kind of explore this. We'll try and keep it as lighthearted as possible when we're talking legal issues with the lawyer. But
Understand. I'm familiar with that.
So I think most folks listening know this, but let's set the stage first. So the state board met 2 Wednesdays ago. Gosh, that also seems like forever today ago, and passed a bunch of waivers. Do you want to go over the highlights of those?
Yeah. So that meeting was on March 25th. Was the special meeting on that Wednesday morning. That was a meeting to do a couple of things. One was to re-examine or reopen the earlier order which ceased all operations for accredited public schools in the state. And so on the 25th, the board voted to amend that order and move forward, go on the offense, if you will, on this distance learning, ensuring that instruction will continue for the remainder of the school year. In doing that, the board set the remainder of the school year from April 6th to on or after May 8th. And so we've received the question, does the school year end on May 8th? Well, that's the earliest that it can end if a school district wants to receive the waivers that the board granted. The set of waivers that the board granted, I think there were 15 in total, ranging from the school year, the length of the term normally is 180 days or 1,080 hours at a minimum. The board forgave the 2-week closure period, and in return, districts had to provide a set of assurances. They're not long. They're about a page and a half at most, 7 assurances relating to compliance with federal privacy laws and the guidance that was recently issued around those federal statutes and regulations, programs and services for students with disabilities and the new guidance that has come out, as well as a number of other things, including compliance with CDC guidelines. So if a district provides those assurances and a very brief description of their distance learning plan, in exchange for that, they get those waivers that the board passed and approved on March 25th.
Okay. And those distance learning plans they're due today, correct?
No later than April 6th. So from the board meeting, or I guess the day after the board meeting is when we opened those assurances. Last check this morning, we had just over 400 received, and we've set an internal requirement that they will be turned around in 1 to 2 business days at the latest.
That's fantastic. That offers me an opportunity to say what I planned on starting with and then forgot. I know you personally have been working a ton of hours, and you are one of many at the State Department. And I know I've talked with schools, I've talked with school leaders. I just want to commend the State Department and all of its employees. And that starts from the top with State Superintendent Joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Her leadership is just phenomenal. It's been incredible.
Cream rises to the top when when the chips are down, to throw in 2 cliches at the same time. And I think I speak for all of our educators in saying thank you. We know these are really, really difficult times. I know there was lots of concern. Now I think we look back and say, of course we had to do distance learning, but a few weeks ago that was controversial. And I remember talking to people who were, questioning whether it was really necessary. And I said, I know one thing, I'm really glad I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah. And so backing up to the board's initial order on March 16th, the leadership from the state superintendent, Hoffmeister, to the board members speaking one message of ensuring student and personnel, professional educator safety and well-being was clear right from the get-go, and that's continued. But I think equally and more, we've been as impressed with the schools and what they're doing. In a sense, what we are doing is providing the guidance and an overview through the FAQs that we continually put out, the assurances and so forth. But the school officials, the leaders in those schools, and the support personnel, everyone in the communities, the decisions they are making from appointments and scheduling, pickup of medication, nutrition, on down the line, is just quite unreal. It's so impressive.
Yeah, last Sunday, the State Department held a call with all schools just to provide additional guidance on these distance learning plans. And I never got the final number, but I know when it kicked off, State Superintendent noted that there were over 700 people on the call.
Yeah, I think initially our limit was said to be at 1,000, and we looked up at the screen and there were 1,123 at one point. So.
Oh, really? That many people?
Yeah, and so you made the comment that we've been working long hours. Everyone has, right, in the state, and even outside the state, obviously. But that's what's required. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So okay, so you made this. So schools are turning in these distance learning plans. You guys are turning them around, and I guess in most cases it's just an approval. Or are you getting some feedback with that?
Yeah, it's been really, really impressive. I've actually been super impressed, to say the least, with the descriptions of the plans that are coming in, from large schools to small schools, urban, rural, all over. The detail in the plans has been pretty incredible, and it looks different, right? Even within certain communities, it looks different on one part of the town and a school site compared to another, and in between grade spans as well. But they look really good. And so some will have the packets, due to connectivity issues that are currently existing in the state, and maybe that's what works best for that community. Local decision, support that. And then at other options, you might have online courses. So it just varies, but overall, been super impressed.
That's cool. Yeah, as we get sort of into this and get a couple weeks under our belt doing distance learning, I'd like to turn these conversations into talking with superintendents and principals and even teachers about what's working. What did you initially set out to do? We know these plans are going to get in. I think most people have had this experience. One of my daughter's teachers reached out and scheduled a Zoom show and tell as a way to practice using Zoom and get everybody on the platform. It crashed. It didn't crash. It just went terribly, the first time. And then she wisely sent out a note and said, let's try this again in 30 minutes. And then it went better. And, those are the kinds of things I think we're going to have to figure out, how to
I think we all are, myself obviously included, really didn't use Zoom prior to a few weeks ago. And so kind of a crash course, and, it's like any policy or anything that we do, it's a living document, and we look at it, re-examine, and see how it works best going forward.
Yeah. And I think we'll get back into the legal issues here, but I think the other thing, I need to have positive things that I grasp to. Now that can come off as unnecessarily grasping for positive things. And we know this is, ain't nobody happy about where we are right now, right? Like there are, while we're doing distance learning, we know there's going to be equity issues. I know I'm sick and tired of being at home. No offense, I love my family a lot. I don't like them all the time right now. So, but I mean, even more so, some people's jobs are lost, and not just forgetting the most important part, which is all the health issues people are having. But the one potential silver lining that I'm going to try and focus on is, what can we learn from this? We know that I'm viewing this as like a cross-training opportunity for teachers, right? Like they're going to, just by necessity, have to do things differently.
Right.
And I think that will present some really good learning opportunities. The thing I've said a few times is, look, I know in 10 years, like we talk about 9/11 now and what we remember, right? Like I know, 10, 20 years, we will talk about this time and we'll remember the fear, we'll remember the economic impact. I mean, we know that stuff. I also hope that we can say, and this is how we fundamentally changed education. We were able to personalize instruction. We were able to learn these things. We were forced to learn these things. And then when we were able to return to normal, whatever that word means, that we could apply these lessons learned in new ways. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with the optimistic outlook on things. I think we firmly believe that we will get through this, and we will be stronger and better on the other side of it. So,
I hope so. And I'll be larger. I don't know about you. So
yes, yep, certainly.
Yeah. My wife is threatening to padlock the pantry, so I might help her install it. All right, let's get back into seriousness here. So we've said the word distance learning. Talk about some of the legal questions. I know things like grades have come up, special education, all the stuff. Like, what are the legal questions that you're getting about the distance learning plans in the district?
Yeah, there's certainly no shortage. Not that there was before where we are right now either, but in the times that we are in right now, as you said earlier, nobody asked for this, nobody sought this, nobody likes it, and so we have to do what we have to do right now and answer all these questions that I'm not afraid to say I don't know the answer to that right now, but we will find out. Not every question has an answer right away. For example, on the CPR requirement that's in statute, that was one that we were looking at constantly because we knew that was a graduation requirement. State board.
Actually, I don't even know what is the requirement? What does CPR say?
Statute requires that prior to graduation, so a graduation requirement, every student prior to graduation must have completed the course in CPR.
Wow. Okay.
The state board does not currently have the ability to waive graduation requirements, generally speaking.
Yep.
But we knew that was going to be an issue. And so it's one of those examples of how do we, take this requirement, I don't want to say a burden, it's not that, but how do we free everybody up to focus on the safety, number one, and well-being, but two, the distance learning. And so we're constantly looking at those things. CPR would be one example. And didn't have the answer right away, but in looking at it, there is an exemption to that requirement for students enrolled in a virtual charter school. And so we made the decision, the interpretation that, well, you know what, where we are right now, everybody is in that similar situation. And so we have applied the exemption to all students uniformly in the state for the rest of the year.
I think that's, for folks that don't know, Brad and I used to work together. So, this is one thing I've always appreciated about Brad is sort of that creative, almost entrepreneurial application of the law, right? Like some might say, well, you're twisted, whatever. But I mean, look, hard times require new solutions, and I think that's exactly the kind of thinking that we need to get to. So.
Yeah, thank you. And it obviously extends our entire agency, and the team we have there is just so dynamic, and the collective decisions. If someone has an idea, let's consider how this might affect other divisions in the agency, and it's on the fly, but the outcome has just been phenomenal. I can't say enough about it. Everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. Cool. One thing that has come up a lot, and I've got a humorous story I'll try and keep clean about Zoom, is privacy concerns and issues. So I'm just wondering if this has come up. I'll give you the humorous story. So we've been using Zoom for office hours, from noon to 1 every day. And we'll keep doing it as long as schools keep on jumping on. We just put out on social media and on our website here, use this link, come in at noon to 1 and ask us questions. We'll work with you on how do you do XYZ with Zoom or Google Hangouts. We don't care. Just come on in. We're just using Zoom for the office hours. So early on, we didn't get a ton of folks because I think schools were trying to figure out how to use distance learning, or just what were they going to be doing. So we took off the restrictions of when people come in, because it was just our staff joining and we were just kind of hanging out and talking. And then one day we got 3 individuals joined. One, I'll tell you, named himself Susan B. Anthony. One was some weird combination of letters and numbers, and one was a creative use of the word Jack. They started saying dirty comments before we could get it closed, which, truth be told, after we kicked them off, we howled in laughter. But I think it was 3 high school kids having fun with us. But you would imagine with children, that's not a cool setting. And we learned if you're going to have public links out there, you want to either require a password, or when people come in to have them muted. You want to make sure that you don't offer at the start the ability of people to share their screen, because I've heard of some pretty unfortunate situations where people have shared inappropriate information. So fortunately, we didn't have any of that. So I think a lot of that is around just comfortability with the settings. There are other questions, though, that I've been reading a little bit about data sharing stuff. Some people have compared it to some of the concerns around Facebook and what they do with your data. I'm sure you've had plenty of time to research all of this stuff. So are schools reaching out with any concerns around that? And how do we handle all of these concerns in the world when we're trying to go as fast as we can, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the dichotomy between where we are, right? I think one thing that we always try to do is provide some sense of normalcy and stability. And so with this topic right here, these are issues that we did have before where we are right now. Obviously, some of these new platforms that we are using provide different opportunities and challenges, but we had those before. I think, as I mentioned earlier about updating policies, we're using Zoom right now. I've seen them in the news lately, and a lot of what they're saying is, we've updated our security and privacy policies, and I would think that they're going to continue to do that as they go forward. I would encourage our office to do that. I would encourage schools to do that. Just continue to look at these policies. And again, that's what we did before, right? But certainly, I've seen the stories and looked at the instances. I think in the Northwest part of the country, State Board of Education meeting was hacked, and they had to stop it and reconvene it. In New York State, I've seen the Attorney General looking into Zoom, and it appears that the 2 parties have a good dialogue going to work through these issues. But yes, certainly these are topics that we discuss, and not just at the state level, but the federal level as well. I know that the federal Department of Education put out some guidance around FERPA and student privacy. Those will be updated, as will our FAQs along these same lines. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've got to be careful to conflate. I tried to lay that out there. There's 2 issues, I think, with Zoom. One is just unfamiliarity with the tool, right? Like if you, there's a teacher we've brought in for some PD from out of state. His name's Alex Kajitani. I think he's known as the rapping mathematician. Neat guy, cool educator. He's doing, I think, Tuesday's math or something like that, and his first one, he had a couple hundred kids on there. And the kids figured out that he was allowing them to share the screen. So they were getting on and scribbling on his face. You can use the whiteboard function and all this stuff. he wasn't hacked, right? Like
Yeah.
that was just he didn't have the right settings in there. And I think that's from what I've heard, at least the stories that I've heard are, I didn't know that I had to mute all participants when they first join, or
Right.
or require a password to let people in. Those kind of things, I think, can prevent a lot of what's going on. I do think there are folks out there that though can hack, no matter even if you're using the tool right. I think we've got to separate those things out.
Yeah, agreed.
Questions.
One other thing I'll just mention quickly. Yesterday afternoon, I believe we posted on our website, similar to what we do with a FERPA release of information. It's just a template, a sample for schools and service providers to look at through the delivery of special education services. So that is something that's new pertaining to privacy particularly.
Is that on your COVID-19 FAQs, or is that on the special education?
I believe it's on the special education portion of the website, but
yeah. I'll put in our show notes if people want to see. We'll put links to both of those documents. So
okay, very good.
Yeah, and you guys have been doing a great job of getting that information and then using those same links and continually updating. So
right.
Thank God we don't have to go update all of our links that we're trying to get schools.
Something that the experts way beyond my forte. They know all that, and that's just the example of if the legal team handles certain guidance, interpretation of a statute, the communications team, my gosh, the work that they've been churning out is
awesome.
Yeah,
and you're doing all that from a distance as well, for the most part, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the world we live in.
It is, and so
cool. A few other issues that could come up. Let's talk about like what's an essential employee, right? Mm-hmm. So schools, it's just natural, right? I mean, I keep on getting up and thinking, how's traffic going to be this morning? I realize, the kids left shoes in the hallway, right? But like, it's just natural to go in. Talk about how schools have, sort of work through this, like who's allowed in schools, how are they handling things like photocopies, if they're doing packets, how they handling food, all that kind of stuff. Locker retrieval, so kids want to come get stuff because they left on spring break and expect to come back, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Again, I try to think of these in terms of a little normalcy if we can. And so these are issues that we're dealing with within our agency, probably like you guys are within your office. These are local decisions, essentially, not to use the term too much there, but
sure.
Who is defined or included as an essential employee? It's a local decision. Now, the state board's amended order on March 25th closed school buildings for the remainder of the year to general student attendance. We've mirrored from the governor's executive order that essential personnel can include those school employees that are facilitating or supporting distance learning, as well as child nutrition and other governance type functions. So as long as we're adhering to the CDC guidelines, the 6 feet of space, not 10 or more, and those guidelines, then individuals who are coming in to support that distance learning, whether it may be a time dedicated to making photocopies, for your example, and I think that's actually an example in the distance learning resources that our team put together.
Yeah.
Those can be determined as essential, but that's a local decision, and I think it's going to be different for each community and school district.
Mm-hmm.
But maintenance staff, custodial, those are the type of functions that are commonly thought of, at least from what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Then the flip side is, I know a lot of schools said, well, teachers should be in the classroom by themselves teaching so they can come in. And I think that, I guess technically that's true, but state superintendents push really hard back on some of the calls I've been on, which is every time people walk through a door and they touch a doorknob and other people touch, there's a transmission point.
That's exactly right. And so as you mentioned, the emails and the phone calls, we're really stressing and emphasizing the seriousness of this, and the safety aspect is supreme.
Yeah.
That's the paramount consideration. And so as much as possible, keeping people outside of exposure situations. That's the number one consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know people are, change is hard and disruptions of routine is hard. And it's a lot more fun to be around people than it is to be on Zoom meetings with them. And we all know that now.
Yeah, we love human connection, right?
Yeah, man.
Fundamentally.
Extroverts like me are dying right now. But like, we've got to do what we have to do to, it's not just about ourselves, right? It's not just about protecting me, it's about protecting the family, and it's about ensuring that we keep the load off the hospital workers, because we know that they're going to be stretched to the limit if they aren't already. So
yeah, absolutely.
So, I think that's critical. Yesterday, the executive order came out, or I don't know if that's the executive order, but on support employees.
Right.
Walk us through that, because I know that's been a big concern. We knew that teachers could get paid, but what about support employees at schools?
Yeah, so again, trying to ease everyone's minds as much as possible and take as many burdens off of everyone as we can. There's a statute that provides the salary protections and benefits for certified personnel, teachers and administrators, as well as state employees when buildings are closed. There was some consideration, some concern among at least a few school districts that same protection did not extend to support personnel. I think consistently through our guidance, you can see that we believe that those mechanisms could be in place for the support personnel just as the others. And we encouraged school districts to afford additional leave opportunities for these critical personnel within public schools. I think approximately 40,000 in the state of Oklahoma. Wow. And so was really, I think we all were really pleased with the governor's executive order yesterday. Very, very much applaud that decision.
That's fantastic. So support employees can get paid through the rest of their contract, rest of the year.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's, for anybody that was worried about that is a pretty big concern.
Yeah. Again, we think and have thought all along that that ability existed, but certainly through an executive order, it really clarifies any ambiguity that may have existed.
Cool. All right, I've got a hot button topic for you.
All right, sure.
Virtual charter schools and transfers.
Sure.
Tell us about the legal questions that have come up around that one.
Yeah, it is a question that we're asked quite a bit. It's actually a pretty easy answer. There's not a lot of statutory interpretation that goes along with this one, so that makes it pretty easy.
You appreciate those.
Yeah, those are the ones that are, okay, let's take this one. So as a statewide virtual charter school, statute very plainly says that their boundaries are the entire state of Oklahoma. What that means is every student in the state of Oklahoma has that school or other virtual charter schools as a resident school district, just as what we would typically think of as their traditional resident school district.
Neighborhood school district. A lot of people are neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So as a resident of that school district, they have the opportunity to openly enroll in those schools. So there is no transfer. It's just an open enrollment, resident enrollment, right? What the state board did on March 25th was to say, kind of, look, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty going on around absences and attendances uniformly in the state. And so for stability reasons, let's look at average daily attendance and enrollment as of the beginning of the school year through March 12th. That was the Thursday before the March 16th ceasing operations.
Okay.
And so that provides stability for everyone in the state around attendance and enrollments. So again, we can free the minds up to focus on the distance learning and the instruction that will continue through the remainder of the year. But yeah, they are open.
Essentially, you're removing any financial incentive for a school to try and recruit kids right now for the remainder of the school year.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that makes sense given all the uncertainty that's out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen questions come in and the responses from those statewide virtual charter schools and others. I think early on there was a post or something that came in. You can see how up to date on Twitter and things I am.
Yeah, you're a guru on the social media.
I know. But I think there was an individual who may have shared a post or something, and the question was presented to the school, and the response was, we are not encouraging any of that activity, and we're all in this together. This is the time to be a good neighbor. So
yeah, no, I think that's
hopefully that continues.
Amen. We're nearing the end here. It's less than a week old, but the CARES Act has been a big topic as well. In your spare time, have you had a chance to look at that at all and what that means for schools?
Very, very little at this point, but I do have an overview. Actually, that's something that's on the task for today, is to read the approximately 800 pages or so.
Well, that's fun.
And not all pertains to education, as someone pointed out recently, but no, we have looked at that. In fact, in looking at the support personnel issue we were discussing a minute ago, there's language in the CARES Act that says, to the maximum or greatest extent practical, all school districts are to continue to pay all employees. And so,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Leaving schools cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've read it. I can't say that I've read the entirety of it, but we will. And, as has been the case all along, we will put out some guidance along the CARES Act as soon as we get it.
Yeah. From what I understand, there's going to be federal funds coming in, and you're right. Like, education is not the most important part of that bill, right? Like, this is how do we keep the economy from completely collapsing, and how do we ensure people are employed, and how do we handle health issues? And education, right? It's kind of the way that I view this. But my understanding is it's a massive influx of federal funds. So I think around 80% more federal funds than what schools are currently receiving would come in and go direct to the schools. What I've heard. Please don't quote me on this, because I haven't even read the bullet points that have been sent to me. Forget about the 100 pages.
Understand.
Yeah, I think the state has about 20% discretion. It's been referred to as like the governor's plan.
Right. Yeah.
So each governor can, they want to leave some creativity up to the states.
Yeah, I think there's broad discretion and flexibility. It's kind of the theme that we've been working along this whole time, and so that continues at the federal level. Perhaps obviously, in addition to the funds, there are also some waivers on these federal programs that we are looking at. And I think the U.S. Department of Education is going to put out a pretty streamlined effort, similar to what they did with accountability and assessments, which, they had a 24-hour turnaround time on those assessment and accountability waivers as well. It was pretty phenomenal.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I think, from the top down, we've seen a lot of examples, the best of people rising up. But,
yeah.
I've been getting emails Friday night, Saturday night, Of course, when you never leave your house, it's hard to keep track of what day it is. But, I think people are really pitching.
You're absolutely right. The messages, the encouragement, all over the place is just, that's the optimism that continues. And it's, I personally, I love it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Any final words here? Or we covered all the hot topics?
I think those are the hot topics. And so for me, I like ending with the optimism and the good outlook. So that's good.
Well, we all need that. So thanks for taking time to join us today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. You too.